at CNBC's Converge Live in Singapore, I sat down with Joe Tsai, Alibaba's co-founder and chairman, who joined me on stage to talk about his growing portfolio in sports and the latest advancements in AI. Great to be with you, Joe. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, David.
In front of the waterfall. We're here to converge. And I wanted to start off sort of on that theme, kind of bring a lot of things together. I'd love to start off actually on sports, and certainly Alibaba, China, US, if we can a bit. But you own a lot of sports teams in our neck of the woods in New York, where you spent some time as well. Of course, the Brooklyn Nets, the New York Liberty, champions of the WNBA, a couple of lacrosse teams, I believe, as well. When you think about these investments, I'm curious, many who invest in sports certainly are aware of the asset values rising over time, seemingly inevitably in many of these areas. Is that the play, ultimately to create value over time through the asset value and a potential sale at some point? Or do you really look for a return season after season?
Every season you're trying to win the championship. The final payoff for me is less financial. Even though the financial aspects are important, I have to make sure that's sort of bottom line, the investment can make sense. But at the end of the day, it's through the love of sports. I have a passion for sports. That's why I invested in these teams. Now, I have a few principles when I do make these investments. Those are sort of, financial, commercial principles. Number one, I want to invest in a league that is where the best players in the world play. So if you look at the NBA, the NFL, around the world, the best players play. It's different in soccer. The best players are playing in Europe. And I don't want to touch European soccer because they don't have a salary cap, and it's a very, very different system, right? And you're also competing with sovereigns when you get into that. And the second thing is you look at the media value. So you really need to pay attention to audience, either online, streaming. I think the world is moving towards streaming. But still, linear TV is still quite important. So the NBA just, completed a massive deal, 11-year deal with a number of broadcasters,
including my own, of course, NBC.
Of course. Welcome back to the NBA.
We paid quite a price for that as well, Joe.
It's worth it.
Is it going to be worth it? Because ratings actually have not been as strong, and I think there is some concern. Are you concerned at all about it?
I'm not concerned about it. I think I just saw some stats. The latest Lakers-Celtics game, something like 4.5 million viewers for a regular season game. That's really extraordinary.
You were talking about, though, how you evaluate in terms of some of your rules. So media rights, obviously, is important.
Yeah.
I didn't want to interrupt you. What else?
Well, I think the Americans have done it right in their sports leagues where if you look at both the NFL and the NBA, there's a salary cap. And the cap is really less about depressing the cost of players. It's more about coming to a balance of a fair balance between the owners and the players. So, for example, in the NBA, the players share 50% of the revenue of the entire league. Now, that's on the top, revenue share, as opposed to profit share. So they are getting the majority of the profits. As long as you set the rules, and the rules are very clear, how you split the economics between the players and the team owners, then I think that's a very good framework to work with. The other thing about American sports leagues is it's kind of like a socialist system. Doesn't matter whether you win or lose. The sharing of economics is actually quite fair. So, for example, TV revenues are shared evenly among 30 NBA teams. Equally.
You still see opportunity, though, in terms of buying sports franchises now? I mean, you bought the Brooklyn Nets in, 2016, 17, somewhere in there?
17.
And obviously it's done quite well, I would assume, in terms of the overall asset value. But is the same opportunity there, or where are you, if you were to look? I mean, is it lacrosse? Is it emerging sports? How do you view it at this point?
I would continue to look at these first-tier sports. They seem to be very expensive. I think the latest NFL team just traded for something like $7 to $8 billion of enterprise value. The NBA team, average NBA team is like $4+ billion enterprise value now. They all look expensive, but then again, as long as you can grow the fan base, these are global audiences, right? And so there's a lot of upside to go. When I invested first in 2017, everybody thought I overpaid for it, but 7-8 years later,
you didn't.
I didn't overpay. There's a very important reason for this. They call these teams franchises, and it's because it's not like anybody can just start a team. Someone has to grant you the franchise to have a team. So supply is by definition limited. The league controls how many teams are in the league. Any kind of expansion discussions will have to go through the league, and all the owners have to vote on it. And it's a very economic decision. They have to look at the potential dilution of additional teams coming in, sharing all the revenues like TV revenues and whatnot, versus does an additional team help increase the fan base, increase viewership, and all the rest of the economics that follow.
You've mentioned, I think, in other interviews and the like, that you want control. You obviously have control of the nets, you have control of the Liberty and on from there, and the arena. But you spent, $200 million to buy a very small stake in the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
Which gives you no control whatsoever. Why do that?
My philosophy approaching the Dolphins is very different from basketball. In the case of NFL, first, I'm a football fan. I love the NFL. I play high school football. And I saw the opportunity, and I told the team in my family office, look at this thing as a pure financial investment. I told Steve, I'm not even going to call myself an owner of the team. I'm a guest when I come to Miami. I hope to sit with you in the owner's box if you invite me to come. But I have an economic stake in 3% of the team. The whole business is not just an NFL team, but it's also Hard Rock Stadium. And they have the franchise for F1 Miami, as well as the Miami Open tennis tournament. So it's a collection of great assets under one roof that I invested in.
You mentioned the venue in Miami. You obviously control the Barclays Center in New York City as well, or own it.
Yeah.
How is that evolving the fan experience? And how important is it as an owner of the franchises that play in the arena to actually have control of the arena so that you can evolve that experience? I mean, is it early days sort of as what you can offer fans?
Well, it's like in any business. If you're McDonald's, it's a franchise, it's IP, but it's better if you own the real estate. Otherwise, every few years, the landlord has to negotiate rent with you, or you have to negotiate rent with the landlord, you have to beg. In the case of sports, the team is the IP business, and the real estate is a venue-based kind of business. So in our Barclays Center, we not only host basketball games, but most nights we have concerts. We're generating revenue from renting out the space to artists, and that's a great business.
Has it proved to be a better investment than the team?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think in the case of real estate, your upside is kind of limited. You're collecting rent, but teams, the IP value will continue to rise as long as you can continue to build a fan base.
I want to move on to Alibaba. You've been back as chairman since I think it was late May of 23, right? So in a letter to shareholders about a year ago, your 24 letter, you wrote that Alibaba had acquired large company characteristics and you would be going back to seeing yourself as a startup. How important is that mindset?
It's the reason why we exist. We have to exist as a fast-moving startup, see ourselves as a small company, and nimble, and be humble. Large companies move very slow, and it's because the decision-making structure is too complicated. If you have to go through 19 layers of approval, it doesn't work. So we really needed to get back to nimbleness and act fast. And why is that? It's because our competitors are all startups. We're competing in the e-commerce space, the ByteDance, Douyin format, the live, short video format, all the social type of commerce. They're all startup companies. And how can you compete if your decision is very, very slow and it takes like 10 days to make a small decision against a startup, that they'll make that decision in 10 minutes.
How do you change that culture? And I should say, just by point of history, I mean, you and I got to know each other into the run-up of your IPO, which was, 2015?
Yeah.
I mean, and now I think about ByteDance and Pinduoduo. Even Tencent we weren't talking about then. It was around, obviously. The competition in your market intensified greatly. So how do you get the large company, and clearly that was not you were not heaping praise on that idea, but how do you get that mindset amongst your employees back?
First of all, the e-commerce industry is the most competitive industry in the world of any industry. There's really basically no barriers to entry, and that's because the infrastructure of e-commerce, when it comes to logistics and payments, is already provided by a number of companies. So as an upstart, you don't need to worry about logistics. You don't need to worry about payment. You can just do your e-commerce. And that's why it's so competitive. You know, when I came in, I partnered with our new CEO, Eddie Wu. The first thing that we said is we need to streamline the company. Instead of talking about Alibaba as 6 different business units, we talked about ourselves as having 2 core businesses, e-commerce and cloud computing. That simplified everything. And it's very important that we communicate that to our employees. And then the next thing is you empower people, especially younger people on the management team that are actually on the front lines dealing day-to-day with users and customers. I think that empowerment is very important. What does that mean? It means that actually letting them make some decisions and letting them make mistakes and train them so that they can recover from mistakes. You have to give them some rope to hand themselves.
Another area, obviously, of growing competition potentially is AI, and I'd love to talk to you about that. It's connected to your cloud business in a variety of ways, obviously partially running the compute for your own and for others. You just released a new AI reasoning model, and I wonder, how do you view your efforts there? Is it as a standalone product, or is it really AI that's going to power your e-commerce business in some way?
We are developing AI for a number of reasons. Number one, we run a cloud computing business which will actually benefit from the proliferation of AI. Because every time someone trains a model or runs inference or do post-training, they need cloud computing infrastructure. And we sell compute. And we're kind of agnostic. Do they use our model or somebody else's model? They need to have compute. And the next thing is, if you look at all of our use cases, all of our scenarios in e-commerce and mapping and food delivery and all of that, we can benefit a lot from the deployment of AI within our own business. We have one part of our business where a significant part of the revenue is advertising. So advertising is all about conversion rates. That can be greatly enhanced by AI. So we see huge upside just within our own business. And then finally, you hear this when our CEO talks about it. He's talking about kind of the ideal goal of AGI, artificial general intelligence. I think today, if you want to call yourself a technology company or a pioneer in technology, you can't not say that you are not pursuing AGI, right? The pursuit of AGI is kind of that ultimate ideal. What does it really mean? Is it really actually meaningful to develop AGI and say, I have the best LLM, I have the best AI?
Well, let me stop you there, because you recently wrote in an editorial, I think you said the AI race is no longer about who has the smartest children. So saying the value of making the smartest AI in a vacuum will eventually approach zero. So what does that mean?
Well, first of all, I have to say a lot of people, a lot of technologists will disagree.
Yes, that's why I mentioned it. It was interesting.
With me.
Maybe including in your own company, I don't know.
Yeah, even within our company, we debate among scientists and I have to say, I'm not a computer scientist, I'm not a technologist. I mean, I have a law degree, so
it served you well.
I'm not sure about that. If you think about AI as the training and the education of kids, what is the meaning, what is the value of educating your child so that they can be a Nobel Prize winner in every subject matter there is in the world. What is the value of having kids that have read every single book in the library and they're very, very book smart? But as a parent, I still have to teach my kids EQ. I still have to teach my kids how to make friends, how to deal with other people, how to manage society and friendships and relationships. That's not pure, knowledge acquisition, right? So same thing with developing AI. To have something that behaves and acts like a human being and makes decisions like a human being, you have to develop a lot of other capabilities. And also the other thing is I found most of the people, 99% of the people that talk about AI and the pursuit of AGI are men. Well, we know that with men and women, we have different ways of approaching things, different ways of thinking about things. What does it mean to have the smartest computer or smartest AI?
Right.
Is it a male or female? From which perspective? So you have to think about all of these issues. And the other thing, what I wrote in my op-ed is the benefits of open source. I think the so-called DeepSeek moment is really not about whether China has better AI than the US or vice versa. It's really about the power of open source, because once you open source the model, people can take the model and deploy it on their own infrastructure. What's happened with open source is it's going to foster a lot more development on top of these models. So now you have small companies and big companies and corporates and individuals and entrepreneurs developing on top of these open source. So the AI game is not just left to the 5 richest companies in the world that can afford to invest like $50 billion a year, right? So now the proliferation of applications will be a result of open source.
You mentioned philosophical debates within the company. Do you talk at all about what you see as the ultimate impact, though, of AI? We're all still in the early days here trying to figure it out, what it will mean for what the nature of work is, what will be valued, what it may mean ultimately for how many people even can have a job. Do you have any concerns?
I don't have any concerns because it can actually enhance what human beings do. For example, equity research analysts can be completely replaced by AI. You can ask them to put together a report on NVIDIA or Apple, and it'll do a great job. But here's the thing. I think the quality of research can really be improved if a lot of the mundane research-related stuff can be done by the machine. And then humans can apply their judgment and make better recommendations. I don't think it'll entirely replace human beings. It'll just actually enhance the quality of work. Same thing, I'm trained as a lawyer. In fact, the work of a lawyer is very similar to coding. When you write a contract, you're actually writing code. And the whole agreement, the whole document has to fit well together. Every sentence, every definition have to fit with each other. Well, AI can do a lot of that. I would say most of it. So does that mean in the future lawyers will be replaced by AI? Not necessarily. Because what do you go to the most sophisticated lawyers for? You ask for counsel. Counsel is not something that is technical or black and white. It is judgment. It is about understanding the circumstances. And I still think that these jobs can just be enhanced by AI rather than being replaced.
That's a hopeful view. In the brief time we have left, I did want to hit China if I can. First of all, the Chinese consumer. We're not worried about the consumer in the United States. I'm sure people have heard and seen the stock market. But in China, there's been concern about the consumer for a long time. Not consuming enough, property problems, saving for, the savings rate has always been incredibly high. What is your sense of the state of the consumer right now in China?
Let me explain why the consumer is so important for China right now at this moment. As you know, China actually achieved 5% GDP growth last year. But what was driving that growth? That was from exports. Coming into this year, because of tariffs and geopolitics, the export sector is not going to be as strong. So what's left is the domestic consumption need a boost. Although today we haven't seen sort of massive excitement in terms of consumption, but look at the Chinese consumer they're very, very healthy. Household balance sheet is very, very strong. You're looking at over $20 trillion of bank deposits by households. So they're standing on the sidelines,
Right.
waiting to spend.
What's going to get them to spend, though?
Confidence and sentiment. And that's why I want to mention this a few weeks ago, President Xi Jinping had a meeting with entrepreneurs. And people underestimate the importance of that meeting. What that meeting did to the entire entrepreneur sector or people that are the private business sector is it gave private business people confidence to make investments in their business. I mean, we just came out and announced that over the next 3 years, we want to invest over $50 billion in compute infrastructure and AI, right? So it gave us the confidence that, to put our earnings back into CapEx and investments and also hire people, right? Coupled with this excitement about AI, people in China saying, hey, we've got DeepSeek, we got Alibaba, we got Tencent, we got ByteDance, we got a lot of these companies that are all doing AI. We're not that bad, and there's going to be a lot of great applications of AI. So the combination of private business confidence and the excitement about technology development will eventually translate into consumer confidence.
Believe that.
Why? It's because companies are making investments, companies are making hiring decisions, are actually hiring people again, companies are growing again, and ultimately that will trickle through consumer confidence.
Finally, speaking of the economy, you sell on your platform a lot of U.S.-made goods to Chinese consumers. Right now, tariffs are 20% being imposed on China. It's unclear what retaliation will take place. How concerned are you about a trade war, about what that will mean for your ability to service your Chinese consumers with U.S.-made goods?
Well, obviously, everybody is concerned about tariffs because if you're involved in the business of global trade, in our case, we actually are involved in two-way trade. Chinese selling to the U.S. and also Americans selling to China. On the Alibaba platform, annually, we sell $50 billion worth of American products to Chinese consumers and $30 billion worth of European products to Chinese consumers, right? So there's a lot of import and consumption going on in China of foreign branded products. And so, of course, we worry about potential tariffs. I'm pretty half glass full kind of attitude towards that. Eventually, the tariffs being a negotiating tool, maybe, but at some point, things will sort of get better. I still think, though, certain protected industries will still be subject to tariffs. All this Chinese EV sectors exporting to the rest of the world, I'd expect that some tariffs are going to be put on them, which already people are.
Not going to get a $20,000 EV from China in the United States anytime soon, am I?
They'll increase the cost of people buying that. So,
yeah. Joe, we're out of time. Certainly appreciate all the time you gave us, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Thank you.